All right, my renowned fam, welcome back to another exciting episode of the podcast. I am your host, Stephen Morris, and as always, I'm so excited to be here. And today, just like always, I brought you another extraordinary guest. He is Josh Sweeney, entrepreneur extraordinaire. And, not to spoiler alert, I guess, but this dude created his first multi-million-dollar business while he was still in college. So, just an incredible journey, incredible story. So he's here to share some of his amazing wisdom with us. And I don't want to drag it out anymore. So without further ado, here we go. All right, my man, Josh. So give me a little bit of your background, dude. Like, because one of your things from when you introduced yourself to me was that there's no such thing as too big of an idea. You love big ideas, right? Does that come from your parents? Does that come from your upbringing? Where does because big ideas, I think, scare most people. Like dreaming too big is scary for most people. So how do you embrace not dreaming too big?
Man, that's an interesting one. So where does that come from? I don't know that it comes from my parents. Maybe it does. Maybe it does in just a roundabout way, So I know growing up, anytime, we wanted something, it was kind of go out and get it, So if you wanted extra money or you wanted something other than on like a holiday or your birthday, you had to go make that money. And so my parents, I would say, enabled me and would say, go cut grass, go rake yards, whatever age I was, they would just say, here's some ideas, go do it if you want to make money. And so I think that maybe early on instilled that there was kind of no limit on to what could be done. It wasn't like, no, you'll get hurt, or no, you can't use a lawnmower, you're only 7. It was like, no, go knock every door in the neighborhood and offer to mow a front yard for $10 and here it is, And so I guess it instilled at an early age that there wasn't any limits. And one other thing I guess I would throw in that my dad always said was, he's like, one, you can be anything you want to be. And there was no limitation on that. He's like, if you want to do it, do it. And he goes, but if you're going to do it, be the best at it. And so, yeah, I guess, coming back and actually opening up and sharing it probably was part of my upbringing. I just didn't realize it without opening up on this podcast.
That's what I'm here for, brother.
Yeah, man, you saved me $150 in therapy there.
I'll send you my bill in the mail.
Thanks.
Anyway, so you said something I think interesting though, and I'm gonna put it in my own words. You said your dad told you could be anything you wanted to be, but if you're going to do it, be the best at it. I think that's really important because nowadays, that's the message. You can be whatever you want. But I think what people miss is that be the best at it part, which translates to me passion. Like you got to have passion, you got to have grit, you got to have drive. You only get those things when you're truly committed to whatever craft you're pursuing. So if Josh wanted to be, an architect, but your passion is really in building businesses like you had, do you think your success would have been limited because you lacked that passion? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I definitely think you've got to have passion for whatever you're doing, and you can get inspiration on that in different areas. And, there's, I think too, just in the journey of life, you can find where passion crosses over with opportunity and maybe something else that you didn't think of. You didn't really know you had a passion for that. So yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity, but yeah, without the passion, I don't know how you would get it done. You'd have to have some other motivating driver, or you might just be miserable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a big problem is because, we're sold this idea that success is, the money, the large bank account, the, big luxury house with boats and cars and all that cool stuff, which that's all cool and great. But my mom was never a wealthy person, and she was the happiest person I ever knew because her passion was her kids.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think that we miss or we're missing the mark in society a lot on that these days. We're chasing the wrong things instead of chasing our passion or what we're truly called to do. That it's just making us miserable. And a great example for me is the military. I was in the military for a long time, and I knew from 6 years old that that's what I was going to do, right? And like, of course, I had my bad days where I'm like, screw the military, I'm getting out. But I mean, at the end of the day, I never really had a bad day in the military. And when I retired after 16 years, all of a sudden I lost my sense of purpose and every day was miserable. And until I started my own company and refound my sense of purpose, I think that's what really got my life back on track. So I just wanted to connect those dots because
Yeah.
I think your dad gave you a more valuable lesson than even you realize at this moment, because that's a pretty powerful message to learn at such a young age.
Yeah, I definitely think, there's a lot of those, and you have to have good questions to kind of reflect on those and let them unfold and verbalize them to kind of recognize it sometimes and appreciate what you were given in those moments. Because I'm the same way. We grew up, probably I say it's probably like lower middle class. But we found happiness in many other ways. And I think that's going back to kind of finding your passion and people being motivated and thinking it's money and buying the things. And I think there's also, what I've seen at least, is it's normally actually to what that money goes to purchase, right? What it needs to go to. So it's just not just getting the money and having the boat. You can get a lot less money, still have a boat, and it's not as big, but be on it with a lot of friends and have a great
Right.
time, right? Or
Right.
you can have a really big boat and maybe there's nobody around. And then, that varies for everybody. So I think part of being a founder and an entrepreneur and just a human is like figuring out what is success to you and appreciating when you've reached it. And that can be challenging for some people that are always striving for more, that appreciation.
Right, absolutely. That's the nail on the head right there. So let's fast forward then. We covered your adolescence, already developing the entrepreneurial spirit at a very young age. How old were you when you started your very first company?
I guess it depends what qualifies as a company, but I mean, I was knocking doors, making money in, elementary and middle school. I remember, I would say probably like middle school, we would go knock doors all weekend. We would cut yards, and then we would go blow it playing paintball, and wait 2 more weeks for more grass to grow, and then just go do it again. So I wouldn't say that was a company. That was just kind of funding our own fun. My first company was in high school. Started doing web design and some other work around web design. I had a small computer repair business because I was always into technology. So I think most of the small businesses started in high school. But my first six-figure business that I grew, I think I was about 20 years old when I grew my first six-figure business. And I would say that was really my first legitimate company, where there was an LLC, there was an entity,
Right.
and I had to use that money to actually pay bills. It wasn't just fun money. And so I would say that was kind of my first legitimate go at it.
What was that one, Atcore?
So that was just under my name, like Sweeney Telecom, and
Okay.
it was in the telecommunications space. So I had been doing like infrastructure and telecom, um, like low voltage and network build out since I was probably 13. And so ran into some challenges where the company I was working for closed its doors when I was 20 while I was going to college and work. And I said, well, fine, if you're going to close your doors, like I still got bills to pay. And so I just went and started my own company. And that was the first one that, got to six figure, kind of the low to mid six figures.
So one of the things I've struggled with the most as an entrepreneur is the sales and marketing side of everything.
Yeah.
I'm a soldier, dude. I am not a salesman, right? Um, but I learned real quick, like one, everybody's a salesman, right? Like you were learning to sell when you were trying to talk your mom into letting you get a candy bar.
Yeah.
Um, so I've learned that the hard way. But what was your process learning the sales and marketing game with your first companies? Was it something that came natural and easy to you, or were there some significant struggles in there?
I think there's a little bit of both. So I think what came naturally and easy to me was just the networking aspect. I just knew that you show up, you build relationships, you talk to people, and activity equals opportunity. And so I think that came naturally. I don't know that I was trying to sell. I was just going to networking events. I was just being around people that, might need our service, might be able to refer. So I was essentially doing business development without putting a label on it. So I
Right,
think that portion came easily. I think what didn't come naturally, and it just takes a lot more knowledge and experience, is scaling sales and marketing, like scaling revenue. There's just a lot more dynamics at play when you start to get past the founder. And that's a real challenge. That was a real challenge for me in my first seven-figure business, the first one that went to multi-million dollars. That was where I learned a lot of those lessons about what it really takes to scale past the entrepreneur. Because what we find is there's kind of a threshold, like a lot of people can go out and network and just be who they are and find a certain amount of business. And depending on the type of business and what they're selling, eventually that caps out. And that's when that caps out, the natural ability to close those and deliver and manage the team and all those times you start to run out and cap out. That's where, you start to learn to move from white belt to yellow belt, and you're on your way to black belt. And a lot of people, I think, there's a misconception in that they're a black belt sales and marketer because they can go out as the founder and generate this revenue. And maybe they're a black belt as a individual salesperson, but that's very different than building a company past yourself. So I know a lot of analogies there, but that's kind of the way I look at it. And where I ran into the most growth opportunity was when I had to scale past myself.
so correct me if I'm wrong, that's where uh your newest, I guess your newest
Yeah.
company comes in, FounderScale, where you kind of go in and advise, help, manage.
Yeah. So the background is, I had my company Atcore Systems, which we grew to a few million in revenue before having my first exit. And we just blew tons of money on sales and marketing. I'm dropping like stacks of cash. Yeah, SEO, that should work. Yeah, ads, that should work. Agency, salespeople, like I tried it all. And I shared that I probably spent over $300,000 on things that had no ROI. That's not the money that had some ROI. That's just zero ROI other than like a lesson. And so other than like a really expensive entrepreneurial education, right? And so when I sold that company and we came up with the idea of FounderScale, I was like, man, there's got to be a company out there that really wants to focus on helping entrepreneurs. They don't just show the big name logos over here and go, yeah, that'll work for you. And then they use it does or doesn't work, but you still lost your money. I was like, how can we build a company that's for founders with the intent of helping them grow, and also with the intent of being very forthright on what does and doesn't work. Like I can tell you, this doesn't work for a B2B. This works for a B2C. There's a misconception there. You got bad information. And so that's really the genesis of FounderScale, is like me losing a lot of money and having a lot of lessons and thinking like there's got to be a better way to help other founders through the journey that I went on.
That absolutely. And where were you a year ago? Um, but yeah, totally, and that makes a lot of sense. I find the best lessons come at a price, and it's usually an
Always.
expensive one.
Yeah.
But definitely, if you can help people avoid learning those painful lessons, uh, with their face, that's usually the
Right.
best. Usually a
Without
little bit
running
better.
into a wall fast.
Right, right. So you were talking about Atcore Systems,
Yeah.
which was your first multi-million, where you stepped away. What was that process like? Was
Yeah.
that
So
intense?
the exit,
Yeah.
no, it was probably pretty, I guess it would be pretty easy because, I think if we were selling for tens of millions of dollars or something, it probably would have been a big exit. It would have been a lot more intense, with lawyers and stuff. But, at a few million in revenue, you're, at least for a services firm, the multiples aren't super high. So, it was a pretty interesting experience. We had another partner that was in our space approach us and say, hey, we're doing a roll up. We've acquired a few other companies like yours. We knew of them. We had a relationship with them. And, the business had kind of run its course for me. And I looked out and didn't think that over time, I thought that over time, there's going to be a lot of consolidation in the next year or two in our market. And so it's a very timely exit. As far as, lessons learned, I think if I did it again, I would have probably taken one step back and maybe shopped it a little more and gone and approached a few other people that might have been good acquisition or good companies to acquire us, and maybe done a little bit more shopping. But overall, it was a really smooth experience.
What were the emotions like? Like, cause I mean, I like this. Renowned
Yeah,
is my first company, right? I'm building, and it's my baby, man. I couldn't
yeah.
imagine selling it. What were the emotions like? Was it hard? Was it
Yeah,
upsetting?
I've been through a few emotions on that. So a few years into that company, we had like triple digit growth multiple years, and we had our first down year where like we weren't doing good. And I was like, forget this, like I'm selling it. We were in a bad spot. I thought that was my only option. It was my first company into the, $1 million territory. So I thought maybe we could get a check and figure it out. And luckily I didn't sell it, but I got all kinds of horrible offers. And so that started me showing me, like, really proving that it's not about it being your baby. It's not about how much blood, sweat, and tears you've put into this or hours. It all comes down to a financial model in a lot of ways. And so all those models are out there. So I got a little taste of it early on, and I decided like those offers were terrible. And I doubled down and I just went back at it. And we had, the year after that, we had one of our most profitable year, an up year to that date at that period of time. So I think I had a little bit of an understanding of kind of what was going to happen. I would say the surprise was similar to what you had shared earlier about leaving the military. Was when I did sell it, I felt like very rapidly, after building that company for 9 years, that one, I lost my identity. So I really identified as an entrepreneur, as the leader of the organization. And so when I went to work for that other organization, I was another team member now. So I lost my identity as an entrepreneur. And then I also felt like I lost my freedom because I managed my time. I dictated my time before, and now I was part of this new company. And so yeah, there was a lot of soul searching, similar to probably what you might have dealt with leaving the military, where you have to kind of figure out where you want to go from there and who you really are. And is that a pivot? Is that something you need to let go of? Is that something you need to revisit and make some decisions from there? So I think that was the harder part of the exit, was the outcome from that emotionally.
Right. Yeah. And I hear that a lot from, excuse me, a lot of entrepreneurs that I talk to that have sold multi-million dollar companies that they've literally built from the ground up. That that loss of purpose is one of the most common things I'm told. It's
Yeah.
okay, so I did this, I got this check. Now what do I do? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. Like, it's like Ricky Bobby in Talladega Nights, like, I don't know what to do with my hands, that type thing.
Put them down. Put them down.
You're right. Exactly. So how long did it take you to come up with FounderScale then? Was it a pretty quick thing, or was it a lot of reflecting and
No,
figuring
so
out
I
that?
worked for the company that acquired us for about a year and a half, and I came up with another idea. And so I ended up leaving that company, starting a new company. I poured a bunch of money and time and everything into that, and realized like that was not the thing, So I kind of went in this other direction and thought, I kind of burn out on sales and CRM and whatever. So I'm not going to do that, even though that's where a lot of my experience was. So I went in this other direction for a while. And finally I was like, that's not the thing. It's kind of what's version 2 of what I was doing before? What were the things that kind of ran its course that I didn't want to do again, but what were the things that really made that successful? And that's when we hit on FounderScale. So we started working with some other founders and entrepreneurs, and just kind of thought into like what was really some of the challenges I had, and how can we go solve those, and be really authentic about it. I mean, I think that's the great thing about FounderScale is in the company I tried before that, there was definitely authenticity to it and kind of the pains I felt, but it didn't come out like it does with FounderScale, right? It wasn't a $300,000 loss, lessons year after year on sales and marketing of what doesn't work, and these big setbacks that you had to grind back from as a founder. So I think there's just a lot to it that added the passion for the business.
Was it scary for you? Because I imagine I relate because the military, the army is so much of my entire adult life, pretty much. I relate everything to that. And so, when you're in combat, you never get used to being shot at, right? Like you become a little bit more able to handle it, I guess you could say, in a better way than the first time when you just totally freak out, or in my case, get
Yeah.
incredibly mad and want to charge face first into bullets. Um, so I mean, like the emotions and reactions to that, it's actually really funny because everybody's different, and it's a trip. But anyway, I digress. Um, what was when you realized like this isn't the thing? I need to go figure this out. Was that a scary process for you, or at this point were you seasoned enough that it's like, okay, I can pivot, that's not a problem?
I don't know if scary is the right word. I think it was a major letdown because when you've learned to do something and like you identify, as I did as an entrepreneur, and you've had a successful company that, grew fairly quickly and that you put a lot into, I think you start to think that you can repeat that success more easily than you actually can. Right. So there's this gauge on like, oh, I can do that again. And so I think it was more of a letdown when I shut that one down, because I was like, man, that didn't go. Like I had all this experience that I didn't have before. I had all this capital I didn't have before. And now I just tried a new company, and now I'm shutting it down after all this effort. So, I think it was a bit of a letdown and a setback to say, okay, there's a lot more dynamics at play. And I would say one of the things that I think I just forgot after 9 years of having Atcore was how hard it really was in those first 3 years. How much effort, one, I was younger, I was probably more immune to different changes. I didn't have kids at that point, or maybe my kids were very young. And so I think I truly forgot how much it took to get where I did in that first 3-year period. And so when I didn't get there again as quickly, it was a little bit of a letdown. It was kind of emotional letdown. Like, you still got a lot to learn. Let me throw you down these stairs and climb back up again. And so yeah, so I did it again. Started FounderScale.
That's awesome. And it's the reason I ask is because that's something I went through very early. Is when I started Renowned, it looked a lot different in the first couple of months than what it is now. And when I realized I needed to change, the man, that was I don't quite understand why I felt so much fear towards it, but I definitely did. I didn't want to do it, but I knew it was the right thing to do. And so I was just curious if that's something other entrepreneurs feel as well when they realize they have to make a pivot to something else or something completely different than what they're doing. What those emotions are, because for me it was
Yeah.
bloody terrifying, and I didn't want to do it at all. I'm glad I did in the long run, but yeah, I didn't want to. So, what is FounderScale? How do you help new companies? And well, okay, let me ask this first. Do you work with straight just, you know, just opening the doors? Do they need to have a certain level of revenue? What companies do you work with?
Sure. So the majority of the companies we work with are between 2 and 20 million in revenue. And then for those ones that are below 2 million in revenue, we just started a new workshop model where they can come to the workshop. Because as a founder, like the one thing I don't want to do is take another founder's money for services and not be able to provide the value. And I think, the difference, what I want to say kind of as a nuance to that is not the value I'm providing, but the value they can get from what we're doing. Right. So a lot of people say, well, I'm providing value, it costs this much. Well, there's also the other side of the transaction of what value are they getting from that. And so for the founders that we work with that are below 2 million, usually we do more of a cohort and a workshop because we can make it more cost effective to where that value is provided. The majority of the clients we work with are between 2 and 20 million in revenue. And the problem we solve is we help businesses go from founder revenue to scalable revenue. And it goes back to, the majority of clients we have, the challenge is that the founder's generating that majority of the revenue and they want to scale past themselves. And so there has to be enough capital available to scale past yourself. And we find that somewhere around 2 million companies, the founder usually has tried enough and learned enough to be able to really get it off of their plate. And earlier than that, it's a lot more complicated.
All right, everybody, I just want to interrupt the podcast really, really quick and take a minute to tell you all about the brand new Renown coaching system. This is a system I've personally designed and put a lot of thought and effort and love into. It's an amazing system. Let me tell you real quick why it's an amazing system, because you get real time analytics. You get to see exactly where you were when you started, where you currently are, and how close you are to achieving that ultimate goal that you set at the very beginning. You get analytics for everything. More importantly, the accountability with this system is the best you'll find anyplace else in the world. I get to see everything that's going on and make sure that you are staying accountable to the goals you set. It's truly powerful. You guys just got to see it for yourself. Go to renownleadership.com, go to the top right-hand corner, click book a call. You'll get to come talk to me personally, and I will personally give you a tour of this system. It is truly amazing. It's one of a kind, and it's truly, truly powerful. I'm so excited. I can't wait to show y'all. That's all I got to say about it. So let's get back to the podcast. Now, um, does that entail helping them develop payroll systems or things like that for as they're hiring, or is it just straight marketing and sales?
So we only focus on revenue generation. So the revenue scaling piece. So it's all sales and marketing. And that's, we will guide them and point them in the right direction if it's operational or HR. I mean, we have other friends and other founders that we know that we can point people to and say, actually, if you want to solve that problem, here's how you do it, or, oh, the operations is blocking you. Have you read Traction? Have you looked at EOS? Financing is blocking you. You're not profitable enough. Have you read Profit First? Have you implemented that system? Right. So we can kind of just share experience, but they would need to go to experts in those areas. We focus on the sales and marketing piece. And I would say kind of the big difference in how we focus on sales and marketing is we're looking at the mindset and the metrics, or mindset and the money first. So what do they have to overcome and think about to make this transition? And then what kind of capital do they have and how they're going to allocate that? So we build a lot of the revenue generation pieces on spreadsheets and have a lot of really in-depth conversation with the founder before they ever go spend money, so that they don't do what I did, which is go feet first and spend money and find out something doesn't work, right? It's way cheaper to spend money on a spreadsheet first.
Right. And I just want to clarify for anyone that's listening that may be interested. This is a completely personalized service, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So we get all of their numbers. We start to get metrics. So it's personalized. We have a proven process we go to get these numbers together, and those facilitate the conversation. But I, as a founder, and other founders that we've worked with, there's only a few ways that they can start to scale up. But those options, like, if you look at the 5 or 10 ways that a founder can start to scale past themselves, within their timeline and within their budget, if they're not funded, then there's only a certain number of ways they can do it. And that is very tailored towards their experience and who they are. Because there's certain things you can say and somebody's like, listen, I'm not getting on stage. or, I'm not doing that, So it
Right.
does very much get tailored to kind of the type of business. Is it B2B and B2C? Those solutions are different. What the founder's willing to do, how introverted or extroverted they are. So there's a lot of factors in how to help them get to that scalable revenue.
I love that. And to me, to me, that's one of the biggest selling factors is I've worked with some other companies and maybe I didn't do my due diligence and they will remain unnamed, but yeah, it wasn't customized at all. It was kind of marketed customized. It was they never said it was customized, but it was kind of like made you think that, I guess, led you to believe that. And it was a very disappointing process for me.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, this isn't what I needed. I need someone to hold my hand here. Like, I can Google, I can watch
I can
YouTube,
Google that. Right, right.
I can read books. This isn't helping me. And so I love the fact that that it's totally personalized and you're working hand in hand with your clients. To me, that's where the rubber meets the road, right? That's what's going to get the job done. So, and also you use pretty high tech. Oh, what was the word? Software, I guess.
Yeah.
Sales
Sales and marketing
systems.
tools. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
talk about those a little bit.
Um, I mean, I don't know how high tech they are. This, I guess, there's so many software solutions out there now. What's high tech? So yeah, I mean, we're a HubSpot certified partner. And so we use a lot of the HubSpot tools and we get very deep all the way into their enterprise level tools. And those enterprise level tools have, introduced things like AI. They've introduced, really complex models for attribution. So the good thing, the things that we love about the tools that we select is they work based on any size entrepreneur. So when we go and look at a tool that we want to learn and offer clients or work with clients on, we really look and say, will it scale with their business? Or is this really built for really small businesses? And when we get to this point, we're going to have to switch. Or is this built for really big businesses and it's way too overkill right now? And so we really try to find those tools that cover a certain growth curve for our clients. And as I said, most of them are 2 to 20 million. And so HubSpot's a really good tool for that because you can get more sophisticated as you go. And if you look at, the entry level piece, probably not overly sophisticated from an advanced technology perspective, right? But as you get deeper and deeper into the tool, you get more of those sophisticated features and you need somebody that's going to help you understand how those fit into the revenue puzzle.
Yeah, I'm a big HubSpot fan.
Nice.
But it is a complicated system. That is
Yeah.
for sure. And especially whenever you're talking to someone that I'm sure like you that knows every single nut and bolt in the stupid thing and how every single one of those nut and bolts works together. And they're explaining it to you, but they're doing it in Latin.
Right.
Just,
Yeah.
it's just like boom, you understand absolutely nothing. But it is a cool system and it's an incredibly powerful system. So that's pretty awesome. I want to kind of shift pace a little bit and talk a little bit more personal. Um, how do you? I mean, you've built several very successful businesses now. And I know the amount of time, a lot of people listening know the amount of time and effort that goes into building a successful business. How do you manage the quote unquote work-life balance?
With what I call purposeful friction, putting things in place on purpose, knowing that it's going to make things, other things challenging. No, I think the best example of that is somebody told me one time when I had my oldest son, my first son, they're like, listen, you think you have all these years that you can get out there and coach. He goes, but you really only have a few. If they start at 8 years old, by the time they get into middle school, they're going to have paid coaches if they're still playing a sport, or they're going to have paid, trainers in another area or whatever it might be. And so I was very lucky in that somebody gave me really sage advice where, you may think you have all these years, but they're like, actually you only have this many. And so what I did was I really just shifted my schedule and decided, I said, okay, well, the only way I can run a business and be, part of my kids' life, both of my boys' lives and my family, is I'm going to go coach their sports, and I'm going to volunteer, and I'm going to be back at the house by 5 o'clock, and I'm going to put down my laptop because I have to be out on a field. So there's no way that I can say, well, I'm kind of giving them some attention, but it's halfway because I'm trying to, pawn them off on a game and then get back to my laptop or wait till they go to bed. It was none of that, right? It wasn't halfway. And so I just decided early on I was going to coach and I was going to take part in those. And if I wasn't on the field, I could work late, but a lot of times that's 3 and 4 nights a week, or a weekend, whatever it is. And so I just showed up, and that was kind of that purposeful friction in my life. And then I reoriented my schedule. So I was more of a late riser. I had to become an early riser. I started getting up at 5 a.m., going to the gym, being at my desk earlier because I needed a full day of work before 5 o'clock because I had to be on the field. And so I just inserted different pieces into my life that forced me to make sure I made that time, because I very, very easily could have been that person, that woke up with a 13-year-old and realized I was never there. Like, not because I didn't want, not because I wanted that to happen, but more because I just love what I do. I love going to, meeting with other entrepreneurs. I love building companies. I love the work. And so I think that can slide very easily if you're not careful or you don't put in something on purpose, like what I did with coaching.
I agree completely. And that's something, and I think because entrepreneurs are typically very similar in mindsets and work ethics, things like that. Like,
Yeah.
we're for the most part, we're all pretty type A
Yeah.
personalities. And I know all the entrepreneurs that I work with and talk to and are in my inner circle, we can get so hyper focused on our objectives, our tasks, our to-dos, our goals, yada, 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 that we completely lose time. And it's very easy for me to do all kind of, one of the funniest examples is I came in my office in my house on a Saturday morning at like 8 in the morning to answer an email real quick. And then I realized something on my website was broken. So I just fixed it real quick.
Keep on
And then
going.
there was something on my website that I didn't like. So then I fixed it. Long story short, I spent the next 12 hours completely redesigning my website. And I had no clue until my wife came in and asked me if I wanted dinner.
I love it. Awesome. I got a lot done. Where'd the day go?
Absolutely. But I mean, that's when I kind of realized, like, oh man, I got to be very intentional. And so one of the things I started doing was time blocking. Everything I do is time blocked. And if it's not blocked, of course there's flex room, white
Yeah.
space, so you can adjust. But if it's not time blocked for the most part, I try to not do it, and make sure I have and I'm very specific and intentional with it to keep time from getting away from me, because I will dive face first
Yeah.
and not come up for air, man.
Yeah.
That's just
Especially if you get onto something, sometimes, I mean, I still do it. I'll come home and it's just my head's reeling on some idea that I had. And I'm like, I don't got to go to sleep till 2 a.m. I've gotten a lot better. I don't feel like that happens quite as much as it used to. There's a little more just natural balance in there. But sometimes it just, like you said, it just kind of hits you and you're just like, man, and all of a sudden you look up, you're like, oh, it's 1 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. I need to go to bed. I got a meeting to be at 8 a.m.
right,
So yeah, it can slip away from you pretty quick if you love what you do.
right. And so what do you one of my favorite things to tell people is uh back in, what was it, 1905, I think, 95% of the US population were entrepreneurs slash business owners. Very few percentage, a very small percentage of the population actually worked for someone else. And then today it's completely flipped upside down. What do you think is best, how do I want to say this without, because I gotta be careful because I could probably tick a lot of people off. Um, what do you think's the biggest benefit of having a large population of entrepreneurs?
Biggest benefit of a large population. Man, that's a tough one. I want to go look up this research that you talked about. I'm not aware of this one. The biggest benefit, I think one of the things that could be beneficial, right? I think, sometimes the biggest advantage is also the biggest disadvantage, right? There's ways that it can be split, but I think the good thing about having a large population of entrepreneurs would be ownership. So like one of our core values in the company is extreme ownership. And when you own your own business and you're the one making the money to put food on this table and there's no intermediary, you really know how everything works. You know why it works. And I think there's gotten to be a large population that are disassociated from what happens with capital, where it goes, how it gets utilized, how your job gets, how you get paid, and I think that causes a number of different challenges and maybe some social issues and other things when you get so far disassociated from like the output. And as an entrepreneur, you can't be disassociated from the output. You are the output, and you're driving that capital in. So maybe that would be one of the biggest benefits, is you really take ownership in the outcome, and what you have is a direct reflection of your abilities, and not only your abilities but outside pressures that are put on you, all the dynamics of the world. But you can really own that and go with it. I think that's one. Trying to think what else. The question was, what's the benefit of having a huge population of entrepreneurs?
Yeah,
I think, the other one is just education. To really succeed and compete with a large population of entrepreneurs, like you probably have to stay on your A game a lot more. And like as a society, that might have, I would imagine that would have a positive impact, right? You'd have a lot more people that you can't stop at a certain pace maybe and take in that money. You're going to have a lot more competition. And so you're kind of raising the game for everybody. I mean, all of this is just hypothesis on the fly here, but it's definitely an interesting concept to think like, what would be the benefits and what would be some of the drawbacks. I mean, I know a lot of entrepreneurs. I don't know how many we can handle.
The reason,
so there's both sides of this.
The reason I ask is because COVID, and I'm not a COVID apologist or denier or any of that, but COVID did have its benefits in that it taught people that they don't have to be a slave to their job anymore.
Yeah.
And we've seen a huge uptick in people trying to take on the entrepreneurial, that is a hard word to say. The entrepreneur journey, because they realize like, man, working in my house is so much better than working in a windowless factory all day.
Yeah.
Which 100% agree. I don't know how people on assembly lines do it. No way I could do that. I go insane. But I mean, we've seen a huge uptick, not near what it used to be back, in the early 1900s, but we're seeing a huge uptick. And so I've kind of been trying to philosophically, I guess, figure out like what are we in for? Are these people going to be able to succeed? What if they do succeed, what's going to happen? If they fail, what's going to happen? And so I'm curious, and that's one of my favorite things to ask entrepreneurs is, what do you think is going to happen with this?
Well, I think that one's kind of a different, I guess it's a different question and a different, big social experiment. And I think, there's going to be a lot of outcomes to that particular kind of situation where you have this influx of people that are entrepreneurs. I guess, first of all, it depends on what your definition of an entrepreneur is and what your definition of success is. So I think I would suspect that the majority, meaning more than 50%, are going to find out it's significantly harder than they thought,
Yeah.
and they'll go back to work. Because it's hard, it's hard getting out there and generating that. I mean, and there's studies out there that show even the people that have been in industries for 10 and 20 years, when they go to start their business, on average, it takes 3 to 5 years for them to just get back to their pay that they were
Mm-hmm.
at. Right now, the difference now is it's not, that would be if you started a company and had employees. Now, if you're saying that you are also an entrepreneur as a sole proprietor, and you're just charging higher rates for you individually and are not going to have any team members, well, you overcome that challenge of the cost. But then you have a massive influx of people that were on the market at one rate, and now you have a massive influx of people that are trying to charge 3 times the amount so that they can have a different work-life balance, and you're going to push jobs overseas and into other countries very rapidly. So if you were able to find marketers full-time at $80,000 a year, which is about $40 an hour roughly, and now and a massive majority of those leave and say, well, I can charge $120 an hour because I'm an expert. Well, then everybody who would have got that $80,000 a year person is now being charged $120 an hour by a contractor. It's harder to get people. So they start looking for other solutions, right? They look for AI, they look for automation, they look for going for the Philippines, which country is going to balance that out. So like when you have these giant social experiments at once, it's almost a different dynamic than kind of the shift from, like you said, 1905, where you're getting this slow changes over time. Or, I mean, I'm sure at the time they didn't seem slow, but in retrospect, that's much more slow than like a COVID situation.
Right.
So I think it's a really interesting philosophical thought to see like, well, how many actually go back? How many are really independents? And it depends if independent is entrepreneur, by your definition. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of interesting outcomes from that. And I think there'll be some really good books on it in the future.
Yeah,
from
absolutely.
better researchers than I.
Absolutely. I think it's fascinating. And
Yeah.
I consider myself unhirable. Like you can't hire me. We just won't get along because I'm going to try to run everything. It's just my personality, and I think that's why I gravitated towards being an entrepreneur so
Yeah.
heavily. Is I was just tired of being told what to do. I wanted to tell myself what to do.
Yeah.
You
with all its pros and cons.
right, right.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
whole new level of discipline that I wasn't aware of.
Yeah.
Um,
I say that one of the hardest parts about being an entrepreneur is you don't report to anybody,
yes,
and
100%.
so you can make a lot of really bad decisions on your own, and I
Yep.
know I've made them. I'm like, man, and I've put in, systems and processes with people and different groups that I'm in and things that now I introduce that purposeful friction. I'm like, I'm not going to make that decision until I run it by these people, that I really trust, because if not, I would just go feet first and realize it's a bad decision later after time
three
and money
hundred
and
thousand
pain.
dollars.
Right. And so, yeah, I've learned that one, you report to nobody, and that's got a lot of pros and cons to it.
So through your entire journey of being an entrepreneur, which have you ever even had a real job where you worked for other than after
Yeah.
you sold your first company? Is that the
Yeah, I've
only
had
time?
multiple. So yeah, my corporate background was all information security. So I worked for a couple of the top information security firms in Atlanta,
Okay.
in cybersecurity. And so that was probably most of my corporate. And then I worked for a few telecom, like infrastructure companies, in my teens and early 20s. So yeah, I've worked for a number of different people and
Okay.
companies over time to various sizes.
Okay. I was just wondering because I just
Yeah.
realized, like, holy crap, if you started your first company when you were 16, like, you may have never actually worked for anyone before, which would be, I don't even, that's completely foreign to me. I can't imagine that's insane. Anyway, through your entire journey of being an entrepreneur, though, would you say is the most fulfilling part of it?
For me, it's the personal growth. If you want to grow a company and continue to grow, There's a point at which you can decide that enough's enough, and that number is different for everybody. But for me, there is no end point. It's just continue to grow personally. And I think that's the most fulfilling part, is that I can continue to take on different challenges every day, every month, every week of various sizes. And I am every day better than I was the day before. I am every week, I'm better that week than I was the week before. I learned something, I grew personally. And that's the part that, may not be a match for everybody, but for me, that's the most rewarding portion.
I agree 100%. And I say it often, very young, probably 20 years old, my mentor told me that you'll never have a wasted day your entire life as long as you learn one new thing every single day. And that, like, I remember like 0% of anything he ever taught me, but I remember that one thing. Yeah. And I apply that every single day since then. It's stuck with me and it's grown with me. And I agree totally. Like, you got to keep learning, you got to keep growing. That's the only way. Great advice. So we're coming up on time. So go ahead, Josh, tell us real quick how people can find you, get a hold of you, and get your services.
Sure. So you can go to FounderScale.com and hit that contact, and you can just put in that you're asking for me, and that'll get directed over to me. Also on LinkedIn, Josh Sweeney. So you can find me there, connect up, send me a message on that platform.
Fantastic. And of course, everybody, I'm going to have all of Josh's links in the show notes or bio, whatever platform you're on. Is going to be down at the bottom. So make sure you scroll down, head over to his sites and socials, and give him all the love, likes, follows, comments, yada, yada, yada. And once you're done doing all that, head over to renownedleadership.com, my website, and give me tons and tons of love, because I need all the love. Josh has got plenty of it. He can share some with me. But okay, Josh, so all my guests, they get to answer one final question, which is, what advice would you give right now to our listeners on how they can lead like champions?
Lead like champions. Never stop growing, keep reading, keep learning, just never stop growing, never stop learning. And if you never stop, you will always lead like a champion, because you'll have new ways to help other people, help grow yourself, and you'll have the right information at the right time.
Love it. Absolutely. Always learn, always grow, and you will not fail. Well, and we got to add in never quit. You can't quit. You got to keep learning. You got to keep growing. Never quit. You can't fail. Absolutely. I appreciate it, Josh, so much. Thank you for joining me, brother.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. So that's going to wrap up this week's episode of the Renowned Leadership Podcast. I am Stephen Morris. He is entrepreneur extraordinaire, Josh Sweeney. That wraps it up, guys. So I will see y'all next week. In the meantime, don't forget, lead like a champion.
I try to sleep, but you're deep in my mind. Got a hold of me. When I'm awake, I'm all blind.
Okay, it's going to wrap up this week's episode of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed it, got a lot out of it. Loved listening to Josh, loved talking to him. It was a lot of fun. So make sure you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the description and show notes, or whatever platform you're on. At the very bottom, all his links are going to be there, website, socials, you name it. They're all going to be right there. So make sure you go give him tons and tons of love. And then once you're done doing that, head over to renownedleadership.com. Come give me some love. And while you're there, click on Talk to a Coach Today button. It's in the top center of your screen when you get on the website. Click on that. It'll take you straight to my calendar, and you'll get to come spend an hour talking to me and get some free coaching out of it. So yeah, that's going to wrap it up for this week, y'all. And I will see y'all next week. And in the meantime, never forget, everybody, lead like a champion. Goodbye.